Today's topic is about barcode strategies and why they're still worth consideration. On June 26, 1974, was the first UPC scanned at a supermarket named Troy's Marsh Supermarket. Actually, it was about 1949 in January that Joe Woodland had an epiphany on the simplicity of the barcode. It was Morse code that gave him the idea, something that he recalled when he was a Boy Scout. Since those days, it's amazing that barcodes are still around and mass-produced and mass-consumed at a very alarming rate in our economy. So, barcodes are simple, straightforward, and they've been in position in existence for so long. Why do we need to even consider a strategy? Well, it comes down to how many times you want to scan, how hard it can be to scan, how far away the barcodes can be, and how often that information is going to be changing. That all go into strategies around using barcodes. One of the nice things about today's technology around barcodes is that modern technology can support so many different forms and symbologies within the barcode, and that makes it easier to develop a universal scan that can handle all types. This includes everything from EAN, UCC codes, GS1s, 2D barcode formats. They're all different ways to encode data into the barcode, but ultimately all lead to one thing, and that's a reliable read of information that is used to represent some idea. One of the best ways to look at barcode strategy is to find out ways to avoid overscanning of products. One way to do that is to leverage license plates. License plates is a collection of material that could be all very similar, but it also could be all very different, that lives within a movable location. And that movable location can be referenced by a unique serialized barcode that can be used to represent the entire set. License plates can be a great technology and technique to use to mass transact inventory throughout the supply chain, but it can also be a real problem in many cases as well. Let's take, for example, the fact that you have a license plate and you have two different lot numbers on that license plate. If you are relying on the license plate to scan product, it's going to be difficult to have any accuracy related to which lot number is being used on that license plate unless you force a scan of it as well. So from a barcode strategy perspective, it always makes good sense to require a secondary scan if there is any confusion about what's on the license plate from an inventory system perspective. And so from a barcode strategy, number one, I would recommend that you have secondary scans when needed to verify product and information like lot numbers and serial numbers. The other challenge with license plates is that if you're using non-sticky license plates that are, let's say, applied to a pallet through shrink wrap, those can be easy to get lost once the tear down of a pallet occurs as it's sitting in a location and being picked from. When a problem can occur there where you have license plates laying all over the floor, and you can lead your operators to be going through a hunt and peck, just scan until you get success approach, which can be very detrimental to your accuracy of lot tracking in those scenarios as well. When it comes to license plates and pallets, some tips that I would recommend would be to place placards or the tags either stapled to the corner of the wooden pallet so that you can easily reference that license plate as product is being pulled off and shrink wrap is being removed. Another technique is simply to put it down underneath the plastic as sitting below the last left corner box or case, so that it is always sitting there as the last scan on that pallet. One thing I would highly recommend is to never put quantity, and if you can avoid it, item information on license plates, as it requires you to specifically print and apply and match these things up during receiving or manufacturing. It also leads to data becoming stale and inaccurate, especially if you're talking about placing quantity information on the license plate. Now let's talk about the size of printing of barcodes. The larger you make the barcode, in general, means the further away you can scan that barcode. So if you have scenarios where you want to be able to scan from, say, a level 3 of a rack sitting in a warehouse, you are going to want to consider 8.5 by 11 sheets that have license plate barcodes on them. The other thing you can do is you can use reflective material for your labels, which will also increase the distance that you can scan from. And of course, the other variable in all that is the scan technology. Being long range technology will also have a big impact in being able to scan from a distance. As I mentioned earlier, using license plates is not for everybody and should be considered very seriously whether to use them or not. One reason why you may not need to use license plates is inbound barcodes already existing in product and raw materials coming into your receiving dock. If this happens and you do have somewhat reliable barcoding coming in, we always recommend you use your existing technology of your vendors and partners to do the dirty work for you. Therefore, I would recommend not relabeling product as it's coming in the door unless you absolutely have to. Your software scanning system should be able to support multiple barcodes per item as they're coming in the door. When you're dealing with lot and serial and expiration products, one of the great technologies in barcode strategies that will help you to eliminate scanning and errors is what's called the GS1 barcode standard. The GS1 barcode standard includes what's called application identifiers stuck within its barcode symbology that allows you to segment out pieces of data in a reliable way to auto feed into aspects of the data collection process. For example, lot number is segment 10. If you do have vendors bringing in product or sending you product with the segment 10, you could reliably take that information and post it into the lot number field of your systems. The GS1 format is very common in pharmaceuticals and in food products. Barcoding technology can actually make it easier to have a traceable solution around barcode scanning without barcode scanning, especially when you're dealing with products that don't require lot tracking or serial tracking, and you have a good process where you can scan material into a location and have that as the only item / product in that location given a certain amount of time. If that's the case, you can avoid a lot of barcode scanning as well during that, so that you can leverage the bin location barcodes. And as long as the system does real-time checks against what are the contents in that location, you should be able to design a solution for especially low dollar value items to avoid that secondary scan of the item. To help with your barcode scanning strategy, you may consider putting together rules and restrictions around mixing items or mixing items and lots within a specific location or license plate for that matter. Again, this helps to remove the need to have additional scans in order to have the system identify what material is being used. If you have items that are very small, it's a good idea to start looking into 2D barcodes. These barcodes can be very small and compact and allow you to have the size to fit enough characters to identify the item. In scenarios where you have small parts that are compacted into a location where you might have many locations within one shelf, barcode scanning can become more tricky to do so. However, it is often that we do not recommend putting item barcodes on any bins or racks, and simply be able to use bin location as the scan to indicate a given item, by also putting restrictions around one item per location. One final tip to look into in your barcode strategy is bin barcodes. If you do have racks with 2 or 3 spaces above the floor, it isn't that common to look at barcode placement of those upper locations at a lower location that represents the idea of it being above it. For example, you could create barcodes that have different colors where a color relates to each of the rows above. When it comes to bin barcodes, it isn't a bad idea to consider third-party printing for these more permanent locations. It's also common to consider a placard that has a magnet to allow you to move bin locations and tweak them as you need to without having to reapply barcodes to the racks. One final note when it comes to your bin barcode strategy as well as your item barcode strategy is ensuring you have the ability to print on the fly. For printing, you definitely want to consider at least one thermal imaging barcode printer and at least one LaserJet black and white printer. If you need to support different media sizes for the thermal printer, you may need to require additional printers so that you don't have to switch out media halfway through. The bottom line when it comes to barcode scanning is avoid overscanning, avoid making a solution that requires too much barcode scanning, avoid solutions where barcodes aren't being read very accurately, and avoid scenarios where you have to relabel. Hopefully these tips and tricks will get you started down a road of prosperity when it comes to barcoding.
Without is a cloud-based inventory management service that brings science to barcode scanning for field techs, manufacturers, or warehouse pickers. Within minutes, you can set up your own personalized environment. With our embedded Microsoft Power BI and SQL reporting services, you'll get live views of your activity from nearly any device and form factor including iOS or Android-based smartphones, tablets, and rugged purpose-built scanning devices. Without inventory management solutions without equal.